You know that person who's confidently wrong about everything, who gives advice they're not qualified to give, who thinks they're an expert after watching 3 YouTube videos. That's not arrogance. That's the Dunning-Kruger Effect. And here's the uncomfortable part. You've probably been that person too. Let me explain. The Dunning-Kruger Effect is a cognitive bias where people with low ability in a subject dramatically overestimate their competence. Beginners think they're experts, amateurs think they're professionals, and the less they know, the more confident they become. This isn't stupidity, it's a fundamental flaw in how the human brain evaluates its own knowledge, and it affects everyone. Smart people, successful people, you, me, everyone. The problem? When you don't know enough about a subject, you also don't know enough to realize how much you don't know. Your ignorance makes you confident, and that confidence is dangerous. In 1999, psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger conducted a study that would explain so much about human behavior. They gave students tests on grammar, logic, and humor. Then they asked the students to predict how well they'd performed. Here's what they found. The students who scored in the bottom quarter, the ones who performed the worst, estimated they were above average. Some thought they were in the top 25%. They weren't lying. They genuinely believed they'd done well. Why? Because they didn't know enough about the subject to recognize their own incompetence. The people who scored highest, they slightly underestimated their performance. They knew enough to recognize how much they didn't know. This is the Dunning-Kruger effect. Incompetence breeds confidence. Competence breeds doubt. So why does this happen? The answer is simple but profound. To recognize incompetence in yourself, you need the very skills you're missing. If you don't understand grammar, you can't evaluate your own grammar. If you don't understand investing, you can't recognize when your investment strategy is flawed. The knowledge required to assess competence is the same knowledge required to be competent. This creates a brutal paradox. The less you know, the less capable you are of recognizing how little you know. The Dunning-Kruger effect follows a predictable curve, and understanding this curve will change how you see people and yourself. Stage 1. Mount stupid. You learn a little about a topic, you watch a few videos, read a few articles. Suddenly you feel like an expert. You have all the answers. This is peak confidence with minimal knowledge. We've all been here. You read one book on nutrition and now you're lecturing people about their diets. You make a few good stock trades and think you've mastered investing. This is Mount Stupid. You're confident because you don't yet know how complex the topic really is. But then something happens. You keep learning. And as you gain real knowledge, you start to see how much you don't know. The more you learn, the more you realize the topic is complicated, nuanced, full of exceptions. Your confidence crashes. Welcome to the valley of despair. This is where people quit. It's uncomfortable to realize you're not as smart as you thought. So many people retreat back to Mount Stupid, where ignorance felt like confidence. But the people who push through, they keep learning, they embrace uncertainty. They're comfortable saying, I don't know. Eventually, after years of study, they reach actual competence, and their confidence rises again. But this time it's earned. It's based on real knowledge, not ignorance. You see the Dunning-Kruger effect everywhere once you know what you're looking for. Mount Stupid people are everywhere. Someone reads one article about vaccines and suddenly they know more than doctors. Someone watches a documentary about finance and now they're giving investment advice. Someone listens to a podcast about geopolitics and thinks they understand complex international conflicts. These people aren't malicious. They genuinely believe they're informed. That's what makes it dangerous. The problem isn't that people have opinions. The problem is they don't know the difference between an opinion and expertise. And the Dunning-Kruger effect is why. The Dunning-Kruger effect isn't just annoying, it's dangerous. It leads to bad decisions. Someone overestimates their investment knowledge and loses their savings. Someone overestimates their medical knowledge and refuses treatment. It also creates conflict when two people on Mount Stupid disagree. Neither can recognize the other might have a point. Both are confident they're right. Both lack the knowledge to evaluate the argument properly. And it makes us vulnerable to manipulation. If you're confident but uninformed, you're the perfect target for misinformation. You think you're smart enough to see through lies, but you're not. You just think you are. So how do you spot the Dunning-Kruger effect in others? Look for these signs. 1. Overconfidence in complex topics after minimal exposure. If someone watched a 3-hour documentary and now claims to understand a topic that people study for decades, that's Mount Stupid. 2. Dismissing experts. If someone with no formal training confidently rejects the consensus of people who've dedicated their lives to a field, red flag. 3. No acknowledgement of nuance. Real experts know topics are complicated. They use phrases like "it depends" or "in some cases." People on Mount Stupid speak in absolutes. 4. Inability to explain their reasoning. Ask someone on Mount Stupid to go deeper on their opinion. They can't. They repeat talking points but lack fundamental understanding. Now here's the hard part: spotting the Dunning-Kruger effect in yourself. This is difficult because the effect makes you blind to your own incompetence. But there are strategies. First, track your confidence over time. If you felt like an expert after a few weeks of learning something, you were probably on Mount Stupid. Real expertise takes years. Second, seek out experts and notice the gap. Read papers. Watch advanced lectures. If you feel overwhelmed, good. That means you're starting to see how much you don't know. That's progress. Third, ask yourself how you teach this to someone else. If you can't explain the fundamentals clearly, you don't understand it as well as you think. Fourth, welcome being wrong. If you're never wrong, you're not challenging yourself. Real learning requires making mistakes and updating your beliefs. Fifth, the explain it to a child test. If you truly understand something, you can explain it simply. If you hide behind jargon and complexity, you might not understand it yourself. Here's the paradox. Real experts often doubt themselves. They've studied a topic long enough to see its complexity. They know what they don't know, so they're cautious, humble. Meanwhile, someone who spent a weekend on Wikipedia feels qualified to debate them. This creates a twisted dynamic. The confident amateur speaks with certainty. The cautious expert hedges their claims. And to an audience, the amateur sounds more convincing. Confidence is not competence. Confidence is often incompetence that doesn't know itself yet. The smartest thing you can say is, "I don't know." The Dunning-Kruger effect makes people allergic to that phrase. They'd rather be confidently wrong than admit uncertainty. But uncertainty is the beginning of wisdom. So what do you do with this information? First, embrace intellectual humility. Recognize that most topics are more complicated than they seem. Resist the urge to have a strong opinion on everything. Second, respect expertise. This doesn't mean blindly trusting authority. It means recognizing that someone who's dedicated decades to a subject might know more than you do after a weekend of research. Third, stay in the learning zone. If you're feeling confident about a new topic, push deeper. Read opposing views. Find more advanced material. Seek out the complexity you're missing. Fourth, be comfortable saying, "I don't know enough to have an informed opinion." This is not weakness. This is intellectual honesty. And finally, remember that everyone, including you, has been on Mount Stupid. The goal isn't to never be wrong. The goal is to recognize when you're wrong and be willing to climb down. If this video made you question how much you actually know about topics you felt confident about, good. That's the point. That discomfort is you leaving Mount Stupid. Hit that subscribe button if you want more psychology that challenges how you think. I break down cognitive biases, decision-making, and the mistakes humans make every single week. Drop a comment. What topic do you think you were on Mount Stupid about? I'll go first. Investing. Thought I was a genius after 3 good trades, then I lost it all. Brutal lesson. And if you want to understand more cognitive biases, check out my video on FOMO and why you buy high and sell low. Same psychological traps, different application. Thanks for watching. Stay humble. I'll see you in the next one.